Hey everyone!
Hi!
Welcome back to the table.
Hey, Preach.
It's been so long since I've seen some of you, and some of you really long since I've seen you. It just feels so good. I think we're just laughing because it feels really good in this space right now. We're just going to take a moment to honor it. Yeah, everybody breathe. Sorry if my breath stinks. Just a little bit. I'm just kidding. My name is Priska. My name is Priska. For those of you that do not know,
I'm DJ, based out of New Orleans, community organizer.
Wendell, based out of Boston, city planner.
oh, I'm based out of Naples. I don't know if
I know, I was like, dang, what is my title? Jesse, I wear two hats, graduate student, also with the Office of Service Learning and Civic Engagement, so I'm excited.
You're always plugging them in. I'm so proud.
I love them, yeah.
Kendall Michelle, I'll be a two-time alum of FGCU come Sunday, so
Back to back.
Congratulations.
I'm ready.
Back to back.
Alright.
Nice.
I appreciate it.
That's
Congrats,
exciting.
congrats.
Oh, me. Isa Diz Pinheiro, and I'm the Assistant Director for Multicultural Development Initiatives within the Multicultural Leadership Development Center. And that's it, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Some people want to be extra, but it's okay.
I
This is
mean,
a
I
safe
could be
space.
extra, but this is not time
No,
and
it's
place
the end
for
of the
it.
year, we're all good, we're just.
Yeah, how's everyone feeling, by the way? Because me personally, I'm so over the semester. Like, I need it to be done right now.
But it's been a great semester for you.
Now.
It's been a
From
really,
whose perspective?
it's been a
From
building
mine, but we've been
semester.
doing really great. What'd you say, Jeff?
I feel like it's been a building semester. Like, we've learned so much this semester. Like, a lot of, I mean, like, things that I know that we're both excited to use next semester, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of what we did this semester was just, like, building a lot of that knowledge and that content about the things that we care about and want to do.
I've seen a lot of growth in the two of you, and so I think that that's why I say it's been a great semester. So, like, in your thoughts and in your ideas and in your wants and needs for yourselves, on a personal level and on a professional level. So I think it's been a good semester for both of you.
I'm glad that one of us feels that way. And it's not me.
I feel that way too. That's two people.
Okay. Okay. How's your not in school? the end of the year, portion of the year.
Yeah, this has been it's been crazy. Actually experiencing seasons outside of school finally.
Right.
Just taking a break and yeah, just getting ready mentally for this new year, this 2020.
New
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. It's a new decade. Yeah. Same for me. I mean, it's been a very interesting year for me. I think I've learned a lot about myself, both professionally and personally. So there's definitely some things that I'll be walking away 2019 with that I'll be walking into 2020, the next decade with. So I mean, for me, I'm excited to see what's coming next. Yeah. Yeah.
That's exciting.
And last time we saw you, we were in Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at MIT working on design principles, and it's been a few months since September.
A lot of conversation,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
How you feeling, Nikendo?
I'm ready to graduate.
You've been saying that like since the first GTT. Like,
But now
how are
it's
you
like-
feeling? Ready
Now
to
it's real.
graduate?
It's here, yeah, it's
Yeah.
here. So like, it's definitely been a good semester. Student government was great. School year's been great. I'm great. Green Table Talks is great. Like, I have no complaints. I'm ready to graduate. That's like number one right now. I'm tunnel vision.
Okay.
That light.
So,
I would like to
What
say-
you got planned for graduation?
Oh man, my family's coming down, so who knows? I'm trying to sneak some people into graduation. That's
Yeah.
I was literally saying
No,
that
but-
earlier. I'm sneaking into graduation. We're gonna release this video
You
after.
can
After that,
volunteer.
right.
You can volunteer.
I don't want to do that. I want to sneak in.
Yeah,
No, but family's coming down, so like I'll be one of the first people in my family to have my master's. So like that's like
Wow. Big time.
a huge highlight. But I know that the
Yeah.
journey's not done. But
Yeah.
I'm taking pictures with my daughter this Saturday, so
Okay.
it's her birthday. I'm not big on birthdays, but I have to do it. So it's just like this week is gonna be a busy week, but a great week. So
Yeah.
family's coming in town already, so
It's a
that's
lot of
like
celebrating.
a lot of
Yeah.
late nights. I'm liable to call off work.
Milestones.
I don't know what you're doing.
Well, not all endings are sad. Some of them are really beautiful. So I'm just happy for you. I just want everyone to know, don't be afraid. Yes, he's graduating, but he will be here for our next season of GTT.
Yes.
A year-long contract.
I didn't see that on the contract.
What side on that dotted line, that
Contract
imaginary
extension.
line? I think I
So one of the first things I told you
That
about
might
the
be it.
contract is for a year.
I'll be
we're in
here.
it together.
I'll be here.
So, it's important because the whole idea and concept of Green Table Talks was about this idea of campus culture, what it looks like, how can we impact it, how can we get these conversations going that need to be happening on campus. So I find it very amazing, and I'm just so blessed to have our two panelists here with us who have studied
Urban planning and
studies.
architecture, both.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know the architecture part.
Yeah,
Okay.
both of us.
Okay. Both of. Okay. I don't know you at all. So I'm just curious, like, what has work been like in that field?
Oh man, yeah, it's been a learning experience for sure. I mean, you know, your real education, I think, starts once you leave school and you're out there having to figure everything out for the most part by yourself. I mean, you know, you might have some help here and there, but really putting the pieces together of like how you fit into the world and the kind of work that you want to do and the kind of impact that you want to have.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been, you know, out of school now for 4 years, grad school that is, you know, the last 4 years I think it's really been a huge learning experience for me, being a practicing planner, you know, working in a city like Cambridge, and you know, learning what planning means for me and to me, and the kind of planner I want to be. Not just within the profession, but in the different communities that I might be going in the future. So it's really been a transformative experience. It's been an uncomfortable one as well, and we talked about growth a little bit. And growth is there's always some measure of discomfort in growth, and there has to be in order for it to be like genuine and lasting. So there have been a lot of uncomfortable moments, a lot of dark moments, depressing moments, you know, where it's like some kind of existential crisis, like what exactly is going on here? But you know, I'm thankful that I've been able to kind of, you know, make it through for the most part, and I, you know, have some clarity on some of the questions I had. I can answer some of those questions. I don't have all the answers, but you know, enough to take the next step in good faith, and then that next phase will bring its own set of challenges and so on and so forth. So I think, yeah, you know, it's been a good experience so far.
So I'm kind of curious. I know you said discomfort and comfort, so if you could just like share your story a little bit. So how did you get into like urban
I
planning?
think you also about to ask the same thing. I was like, before we
Okay.
go to the next
How
one,
did-
can we backtrack? Can we
Okay,
like,
urban planning.
let's talk about the journey. Like, how did you get there? What made you want to pick that? Like, let's
Yeah,
dive
so
deep, dive deep.
I started in architecture. My first master's was in architecture. So, you know, I went through my whole program. But like midway through that program, at some point I was just like, I don't know if this is for me, because I found out that I was a little bit more interested in looking at the built environment from a higher scale, a different vantage point. So instead of like one particular building on a site, taking a step back and looking at a whole city, a whole neighborhood community, and the different pieces that connect them. And so that's kind of like where my interest towards urban planning was peaked. I still didn't know what it was, but I was like, oh, I think I want to do that. I mean, I still ended up finishing my architecture program. I got my degree, and the idea was, okay, let me go work for a couple of years, and at some point, you know, I'll come back and do planning. But when I graduated with my master's in architecture, it was 2011, right? So mid-recession, ain't nobody hiring architects. And so I kind of had to like readjust, and I ended up going back to school sooner than I was planning on it, but it worked out just fine. So I did another 2 years, got my master's in planning, and I've been working in planning ever since. So yeah, that's how I got here. That's the short version, right? That's the real short version. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think for me, I've been trying to force architecture school to be planning school, and I didn't know that until like I got beat over the head with, well, that's not what architects do. That's what planners do. And I said, what are planners? And it was like 4 years in that I was into this program. Like,
Oh, wow.
so I've been trying to focus on people and like communities and culture, and like all these things that are so intersectional. And I've been in the wrong discipline. Great. Let me finish. But there was this guy doing work in Chicago that I got inspired by, doing work on the South Side, and really kind of thinking about how grassroots organizing helps people to see the value in the place and their history. and kind of take ownership over their own like revitalization process. Yeah, and really how to think about like design and culture, like the aesthetics, the colloquialisms, like the way people engage with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what kind of pulled me to planning. So I finished with this architecture degree and then like didn't get into planning school, but actually like worked with a planner doing like neighborhood development. And it was in that space that I became more of like an organizer looking to like convene majority like minority owned businesses and property owners to try to figure out how they can think about like taking ownership of their space that was at risk of gentrification. And so it was in that work that I'm like, oh, so the most important thing that I'm learning in this space is like about the politics of people.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's what planning is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Planning is the politics. Yeah, I mean, planning should be focused on people and the politics of people living in space together. Unfortunately, in practice, profession looks quite different. And so part of my working in planning over the last 4 years is like identifying that and like, okay, this is a problem, this is a thing, and I don't want to be that thing. So what are the moves that I can make to try to be more focused on the people aspect of planning and not just the other pieces to it. But yeah, it's always about people. It's always about people, and everything else that we do is like a function of that. But the focus always has to be on people, and communities, and the different ways in which people live together, grow together in a certain space. So yeah.
So I had that first organizing job and then like realized that I needed more to just be useful to the communities that I was working in, which one was the oldest black neighborhood in New Orleans and in the country. And ended up going to grad school for planning up in Cambridge and have been using that space to really reimagine what organizing looks like and how we think about self-care, how we think about collectives in movement work and not just like martyrs. And how we build up each other.
That was good. That was good.
Okay.
But yeah, how do we like go from like looking at the one or two people that we are inspired by that are looked at as like the face of movements, but like how do we start to encourage people to take ownership as a collective, to show people they all have like different powers?
Yeah, so let me ask you this. So what inspires the both of you to do this work, and what drives your passion for it?
He's still mind blown. He needs a minute.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've been sitting with that for a while and trying to figure it out. I used to say, oh, well, it's just like helping people. But I just look at my great-grandparents and like they wouldn't be considered planners by like certification or like education, but like, and these are two different great-grandparents on two different lines of my family, right? One was a migrant from Mississippi into New Orleans with her husband at 18 years old, and they ended up raising 11 of their own kids in a 2-bedroom house. And like, I think it was seeing my great-grandmother like hold space for so many people when like they both didn't have so much monetarily to give, like has always kind of been like a part of my values. And then my great-grandfather on the other side was like the oldest bartender in the city. So he served as like 64 years, 65 years. And he like passed away maybe, what was last year? At like 95.
Wow.
So, but like, you know, normally people see bartending as like, oh, you're going out, you're going to drink, but like he's learned so much about
Yeah.
people.
Oh, yeah.
He's learned so much
You
about.
probably know everything.
Yeah,
You know.
they say like bartenders are therapists.
Yeah, but you know, he learns how to
Yeah.
like take care of people.
Yeah.
And so many different people
Yeah.
that like in a way both of them like show up as like curators of environments for people. And I like to think of this work as like, this is about caring for people and also curating an atmosphere, an environment. So that's what, it's at the heart of my work.
That's good.
That was
That's
amazing.
good. That's
You
good.
have to follow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go ahead.
So, I mean, for me, the thing that I guess inspires me, I think, is just like the necessity of the work that needs to be done. And it's that simple. I think once you have a certain understanding of the world, of communities, and of all the different stuff that's going on that, just are attacking people or, violent towards people, entire groups, it's like, obviously there's something that needs to be done, and for me, that need is justification of itself to do the work. And that's kind of like been it for me. I mean, I think it's just, hey, this needs to be done, so it's just do the work in whatever way that I can, with whatever I have and whatever time I got, right? Just trying to make sure that whatever I do is in service of that end. That's it.
And it's really cool that you say that, because when you're speaking, I'm thinking of myself, and on a college setting, it's like everything that I do, everything that I intentionally partake in, every organization that I choose to be involved with, it's with that mentality, like, how can I give back to a certain population on campus? How can I give back to the students who are coming in, like, a little confused, not entirely sure where they fit in yet on campus? Like, how can I be that person to create spaces in which they feel comfortable and 100% themselves?
Yeah. So we were in the car last night talking about this thing called Civic muscle.
Yeah.
And I just, you gotta.
Season's joint, yeah.
Yeah, so basically there's a professor up at MIT, a guy named Caesar McDowell, and he talks about...
Shout out to Caesar.
Shout out to Caesar.
Shout out to the Move podcast. Check it out.
Right.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Write us together.
Yeah, but he talks a little bit about what it means not to just think about organizing as community engagement, just going out and reaching people to check off a checkbox, but how do you start to measure people's sense of ownership or sense of agency over their own place? Do they feel like their voice matters? Sure, they can legally vote, but do they feel like their vote counts?
It's funny because my mind went straight to skills. So what are the skills that you need people to be able to do? What do they need to understand? And when we were talking about it, he was like, I just want to build confidence. I want people to feel like what they do and who they are matter. And I was like, that is the first step that everybody, on this campus and our community, that's what we need to be spreading, right?
I agree. Yes, it's important to be able to walk in certain doors and be a part of certain spaces, but do I feel valued there? As my true self, not when I'm code switching, when I feel like I have to speak a certain type of way or I have to dress a certain type of way, but Priska in my core, do I feel like I'm valued in this space? Yeah.
So important. And I think, and this is a question I'll propose to you too, because I think there are a lot of students that want to get involved in community organizing on and off campus, but there's a lot that's holding them back. So I want to ask, what is the hardest part about it, but also what is the most rewarding part about it? Because it's not always easy, and people need to know that going into it, but there's so much reward with it too, if you want to call it that, for better words.
Satisfaction.
I was just going to say satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is going to be the conflict. I think, because I think conflict is necessary.
Yes. Yes.
Right, but even navigating that is not going to be easy.
Yeah.
And conflict is just something that naturally comes out of a group of people just trying to sort some things out, right? Interdependent individuals are going to run up into each other in uncomfortable ways, and that's okay, so long as that conflict is not fundamentally dehumanizing. You see what I'm saying?
Having civility within it.
Right. And so if it's not like polar, opposites in terms of ideology, then having that conflict can be a good thing. But being within that space as a conflict is being sorted out can be hard and uncomfortable. And intimidating, right? Because who wants to walk into that? Who wants to walk into that? But I think it's understanding that it is necessary and it has to take place in order for whatever comes out on the other side to be better than what came, but also to sustain itself, to last itself. You can't be conflict averse, especially when it comes to communities. It's this has to happen. Let's move through it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Let's have these conversations. Let's learn about each other. Let's build that communal literacy, right? And then move forward from there. So I think that's definitely the hard part is engaging with that conflict.
I think especially now we see that our students and our younger generation right now, they're so dependent on technology, on communication via technology, that face-to-face communication is lacking, and just having those conversations, those tough conversations, is very difficult for them, and they just avoid it at all costs. And not everybody, I don't want to lump everybody into that, but we see a lot of it where if there's a conflict, they just avoid.
It's not my problem, I'm about to graduate.
Right, so it's more of
Leaving.
like, well, how do we guide them to have that healthy conversation and the healthy disregard for the impossible, not to like coin leadership or anything, but it's but it's honestly like, how do we move through that process with them, and I know how, because I do this on a daily basis, but allowing them to understand that that is a necessary process in order for them to be successful in their lives outside of this space that they are so secluded in, and kind of in their little silo of university. Or I can call mom and dad or whoever their guardian is and say, this is my problem, but I'm just going to avoid it at all costs. But you know, there are bigger issues, and there's things that they need to learn and work through in order to be successful in those ways.
And DJ was mentioning, I guess you didn't talk to us at all this year. Because it's like, well, DJ and I had this. DJ said this, and Wendell was just like, you know,
Listening.
But DJ mentioned something earlier about just, you know, where people are at, like socially, emotionally, and you can go ahead and say, because you're saying so much better than I can. But I told you I was gonna make you remember.
I guess like to the point about technology, I think folks are like already socialized before they come into university campus, and it has like technology like exacerbates or that issue, right? But I think people in general like don't know how to deal with conflict, and they don't feel confident to even engage it in a way that feels like, oh, I feel bad like telling someone no.
That's me.
Right? Like, or like take.
We worked on it this semester though.
We did.
Yeah, but
I hid, so I didn't have to say no, but it wasn't like I had
See,
like,
avoiding the
ability.
conflict.
Right?
You gotta own up.
Clearly
It's
avoiding.
either-
I'm tragic.
It's either that or it's like, oh, I'm gonna take it all on,
Yes.
and I want to handle it all.
Also me.
Right?
Oh my God.
But like, you know, a lot of it has nothing to do with the tech piece, more so like our models for like how to take care of ourselves are like, we don't really see them. We don't see a lot of people in the community, like doing community work, who are like not sick. And like to the point about what is the hard part about organizing, it's, to me, the hardest part is self-care and like finding environments that encourage self-care.
Yeah, I think people just forget like it's okay to get tired. We just can't all get tired at the same time. You know what I mean? It's almost like that concept, because like that used to be me. Like I'll say yes, and now it's like no.
Well, and that's
I'll do
the
my
amazing
own.
part about like collaborating and delegating too,
Yeah.
is that like that's how you raise other leaders, because there are times that you need to sit down and take care of yourself, but during that whole process of what you're doing, you should be raising other people up. So it's like, you know what I mean? And like, that's a level of trust that's hard to get to too, but it's important just to be like, I know that you can do this. Like, you can do it.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's why community is so important, right? Because if you establish a community as a certain kind of culture within that community, right? Because if you establish the infrastructure and the expectation for self-care and mutual sacrifice, then you saying no to something doesn't hurt the work, because we then pick up the slack, and when it's somebody else's turn to say no, then
You
you
pick
see what I'm
up
saying?
on it.
But you have to create that culture within that community of this is the mission, these are our values. There has to be time for self-care, for you to like take time for yourself, to be with your family, your friends, or just by yourself, and that's okay. Because when you come back to work, we need you at 100%. You know what I mean? So you take turns doing that, but you have to establish that kind of culture and expectation. of-
And I also think it's important, like, learning how to self-care before you distract. Like, so many people
Oh,
wait
yeah.
till they're, like, at that last
It's
strat,
zero.
like, I just can't, and it's like,
Yeah.
the time that they need is like, I can't
Crash,
give you,
yeah.
like, 2 weeks now,
Yeah.
come on.
Or-
But it's just, like, taking care of yourself as you go. Like, I developed this semester, it's like Fridays are Priska days. Like, don't put anything on this day, don't ask me to do anything on this day, because this is the day that I'm gonna recharge, so that I don't get to the point where I'm feeling so exhausted that I just can't give anything to anything.
I think also we need to realize that it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think we have such a hard time, like, accepting the fact, like, either when we're sick, because we're like, I'm not sick. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, like, I can't be sick. I'm Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah.
And so, or the fact where I'm like, there's just days where I'm like, I'm depressed, or like, I saw
Yeah.
something on the news and it just hit. You know, and that's so true for our POC communities, and that every single day something comes up that it might hit us in a different way. And so we have to be okay with not being okay some
Right.
days. Is it gonna happen every day? No.
But
But
there's some days.
there are some days where you just gotta be like, you know what? I am not good today.
Right.
And rely on that
Yeah.
community to
Right.
be able to talk through why you're not okay, whether
Yes.
that's because you have your therapist, or whether you have your community at home, whether that be your family, whether that be your friend group, whether that be a confidant or a mentor, whoever that might be, so that you can talk through that and work it out. And if it's by being with yourself, then be with yourself, because my grandmother says, you're never alone, you're not by yourself, you're with yourself. And I think that that's something that, I know, right?
The community.
My grandma dropped knowledge on me, and I was like, I remember, I was like, dang, grandma, I was like, that's a good one.
But just like if I hear another person be like, just okay? What? Huh? I'm like, yeah.
Just okay.
yes,
Just
but
okay.
Yeah.
my response to
Right
that is,
now.
why just okay?
Mm.
Yeah.
Why? What makes it just okay? Like, why isn't it good? Why isn't it great?
And what do you
I
need?
mean,
What
to
do you
get
need?
to good or
Yeah.
great?
Exactly.
And
so
that
it's-
might be being like,
it's a
I don't
different
know right now.
response.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, and
I'll
that's
get- I'll
okay.
get there. Yeah.
Right, but I think it's when you are with a group of people, or when you say that, you know who your group is by their responses.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so if you tell me, oh, I'm doing okay, why just okay? I always ask my people, no, I shouldn't say always, but for the most part, I try to ask, well, why just okay?
Yeah.
Find something good. Tell me something good about today. What happened to you that was good today? It doesn't, there may have been 20 things that were wrong, but find the one good in those wrongs, because there's always something good in a day.
Yeah.
And it's important when we talk about community, it's like, especially being in college, like understanding that community doesn't have to just be 2 or 3 people or the friends that you came to college with, but
Yeah.
also including those mentors and people, because I've encountered some problems, like my friends, my classes could not understand. Like
Yeah.
when I saw When They See Us, half of my peers couldn't even watch it.
Yeah.
You know, I was literally I'm just gonna watch it because I feel like I have to. Most of my friends didn't see it, and then now I'm here on campus. I'm like freaking out to Jesse, like I don't know what I'm gonna do. What's the
And I haven't
point?
seen it, and I was like,
There's no
"Ah,
point of
sorry."
being alive. There's no hope. There's no justice. There will never be. And Jesse's like, like,
Okay, what else are you okay?
She's like, I never see it. I don't know how to help. But then I had Dr. Blakely, and I went to Dr. Blakely, and I had some time with him, and I was just like, it's still not enough. I'm still not okay. And
But a
like,
lot came out of that though too.
it
Think
did.
about that.
And I remember just sitting in Issa's office and like just realizing, okay, I'm not okay in this moment, and like kind of crying it out, and like letting people inspire you and giving you that hope again, because
Yeah.
there's so many things that can just knock you down being a person of color. You open the news,
But
Facebook, everything. There's
Yeah.
so many things that can just tear you
Yeah.
down, but just finding people who can reinstill that hope in you and
Yeah.
keeping hope alive to continue moving on and progressing.
And you took those feelings into action though too. And that's what really, like that's involving your community. So you had those feelings and you're like, I know other people are feeling this way and we're all about to come back from summer and we need to come together and talk about this. And so that was our first GTT,
Yeah.
was about When They See Us. And it was,
Where's the footage?
it was
Who knows?
we're not gonna go there. it was so good. And it
Y'all
was,
just lost y'all lost
No,
tape?
it's
We're
a
not
long
gonna talk
story.
about it.
Off camera, we'll talk about it.
it was okay.
But I think you made a good point about like, not being okay, and to the point you were trying to make earlier about like emotional intelligence. I think we have to practice allowing people to show up. Like some of that training is like not being okay to not be okay, and letting people show up for the cause and show up for you.
Right.
And like it's a training process, and people don't always
Yeah.
get it the first time
Yeah.
because they're learning you just like they're learning a new subject, or
Absolutely.
like, and it takes practice.
Yeah, not everybody knows how to respond or to react to whatever you tell them, whether you don't relate with it or you just don't understand. And one of the biggest things, and like, I was just telling you, I just watched American Son, and like, one of the scenes was the officer kept telling her, I understand. And she's like, stop telling me you understand. And I'm not giving it away, but she's like, you don't understand. So stop saying you understand,
Yeah.
because you will never be in my place to understand where I'm coming from, so stop saying it.
Yeah.
So we always say, seek to understand to be understood. But there's some times where people just won't understand,
Yeah.
ever. And you have to accept that, and you have to understand, not to like use the word again, but you as a person have to understand and accept that there's just some things that'll just never,
Yeah.
it'll just never click, it'll just never happen. You can be empathetic, you can, you know, be there as a support, but don't say I understand, because I will never understand your experience as a black male in this world, because I'm a Latinx woman. There's no intersection there. I might have a similar experience as a POC, but that's very different.
Right. All right, this just got really depressing.
I know. Okay, so highlights of community
Yeah.
organizing.
Well, I
What
would-
are
right,
some
right,
awards?
right,
What are
right.
some?
What I would say is like, and sorry, go ahead. You look like you were gonna say something.
But you were literally saying something.
Okay, sorry. So what I was gonna say is, what are some maybe tips or advice that you can give to students who might be considering community organizing, planning, wanting to do this work and maybe don't know how to start? Like, where do they begin?
I'm gonna add on to that because we're like on the same page. We're right here, sis. We're right here.
I got
But
you,
like
sis.
what it looks like on a campus to organize, because I feel like that's the first space. This is your community right now. You need to understand how the community works and how to organize in this space. Because for me, I've been trying to organize and like it just got so hard, and I just keep hitting this wall. I'm just like, but is it worth like my sanity, like my emotion, like my emotional state to like keep trying to do this? And then, you know, have my mentor, Dr. Blakely, it was just like, even if it's just one person, even if it's just two people.
Yeah.
But for me, it's so hard to see that as a student, because it's like, no, if it's impact, it needs to be greater than that. And I understand that it's not, but it's like when it comes to reality and practice, it's so hard to like see it.
See, yeah, but I think what's different is like, you're not like making a product or like making a website, like you're creating a culture.
Yeah.
And like culture work takes time, and sometimes you don't get to
See
reap
the
the,
fruit of it.
yeah, and so like,
It's a Chinese proverb.
The
yeah.
Dr. Blakely proverb. All semester. It's literally, he's telling me I'm not gonna see it. He's like, you may not see the fruit.
Straight
You may
up,
not
yo,
see
but
the fruit.
those
It's
fruits-
like gardening 101.
That's exactly what
Plant that
it is.
seed. What takes years to grow?
I planted it. What now?
That's
I'm like, gotta
so
keep
good.
watering it. It's not over.
Yeah,
But I
but
want
some-
the juice from the fruit.
So you can come back. Come back and see it.
Listen, I came back.
There it is.
yo.
That's fact.
Did you
But-
see it?
Yeah.
I saw some of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, not to take over, but I graduated from FGCU in 2010, and I left, and then I came back and I was like, oh, this is a different campus. But there were some things that I did when I was a student that I can still see that the impact is still there from when I was there. Very, very different campus, but
Yeah.
you know, over time, there was little pockets that kind of stayed, and they've just evolved. Is it the same thing, and is it the same intention that I had when I was a student? No, but it has to evolve in order to be successful and to sustain.
Mm-hmm.
So
Because
you
community
have
evolves.
right. You have to allow it to grow in its own habitat, I guess. So
So
you
if
know
the
what I mean?
habitat is growing, the actual thing has to grow as well. It can't.
Right.
It probably wouldn't be able to survive in this completely new campus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You finished. You was done.
I just want to sit here and be in awe of you.
No, I just think also like people bring different intelligences, right? And like one experience I had trying to organize on campus was just like, I'm like, yo, this building is on fire. Like, we gotta put the water out now. And everybody's like, what fire? And it's
Yeah.
like, you know, it was the students of color, and like in our organization and larger student body, like everybody's like, I don't see it. And especially like the generations behind me, right? And it took like years to pass, like post-graduation, when they're like, yo, I'm glad you said these things, because now I see it. Or I'm glad you started this thing because now I know this is something I can pursue, or these resources are available.
Now I see why it's important. Like, I see what you were saying.
Yeah.
I didn't see the fire then, but I see the fire now.
Yeah, but during the moment, like I was pissed. I was like, come on, like yo, like we got it. I just need y'all to show up just a little bit. But everybody's motivated by something different,
Yes.
You know, some people are just like, I want to be in the dope atmosphere
Yeah.
and just hang out with people. Some people are like, yo, I want to change curriculum. Certain folks are like, I want to take advantage of resources to travel. Like, everybody has a different reason for being involved,
Right.
and it's like, how do you create the atmosphere where people feel like all those things are happening, and you don't even have to, like, yeah, it just feels like, oh, this has always been.
How were you able to create it, and how did you do it?
I'm still evolving, apparently.
Okay.
So.
I love to hear it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it's interesting to see, like, mentees from, like, who are freshmen who are now, like, graduating,
Yeah.
who are, like, taking advantage of things that, like, to them were completely out of their reach. Like one got, like, an internship at the new Smithsonian
Wow.
Museum,
That's awesome.
and, like, never even thought, like, oh, as an architecture student, I didn't know this was an opportunity, right? But, like, encouraging people to reach and just to ask and to expect.
I think the one thing that is important to acknowledge when it comes to community work, any type of community work, whether it's organizing, planning, activism, whatever, is ego cannot be part of the equation. Any shred of ego that finds itself into that space, it's a cancer, and it'll eat it from the inside out. We each have our contributions to make in our respective communities, and if the focus is on what your particular impact might be, ego, then I think it creates the opportunity for you to not give as much as you otherwise might because of because of the reward that you won't be able to receive that you feel like you deserve. And it kills the community because your contribution is either less than it would be or doesn't happen at all, and then it can't move forward in a certain kind of way, right? You have to have faith in what you are able to do and the impact that will have, whether you see it or not, towards that particular end, right? So you coming back and seeing pieces of what you did, it's a little bit different, and that's okay, because community is something that's constantly evolving. So too do our contributions and the impact, though. It has to, because if a community remains stagnant, it's a dead community, right?
Yeah.
So you come back and you see, oh yeah, it looks similar to what I did, and that's a little bit of reward, right? But what happens if you did not do that thing, you know,
Way back when.
way back when?
Way back
You see
when.
what I'm saying? So, and I think that's something to keep in mind, is like, this is not about us.
Right.
We're important, but it's not about us. So ego's got to go. You got to check that at the door, otherwise it kills things.
Yeah.
You know, it'll just, you know what I mean? And whenever there's competing, I mean we already know. I mean, we've probably seen examples of that all over the place. And there's a lot of egos in a room. You don't even want to be there because it's a toxic
Yeah.
environment.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So why would you want to contribute to that nonsense?
Right.
Get rid of it. Get rid of it. So that's super important to, yeah. to
That's really
acknowledge.
important, because ego is one of those things, like, if you're not checking yourself, you're not even gonna realize that it's active.
Mhm.
Like, even for me, like, now I'm just like thinking, you know, how many times did I walk into a room with ego? And it could be translated as something else. Like, for me, I'm thinking, I'm just here, I'm just so passionate. I don't wanna give my time to something that no one's gonna wanna be a part of, put my energy somewhere else. But is that really passion, or is that my ego speaking? Like, because I feel like, whatever it is that I feel, but just really understanding, like, some of the terms that we use, like, in this conversation, like, really understanding what those words mean, like, what is ego, how it manifests, how it manifests within yourself, because it manifests different ways for different people. So
And it's so important for people to reflect.
Yeah.
We don't do it enough.
Right.
We don't give enough time for
Time.
ourselves, but we also don't get enough time to, like, actually reflect on the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and I don't think you should feel bad necessarily if that comes up. I think, because I think it's just part of our existence as human beings, right? Is you have to wrestle with ego. So don't feel bad or be discouraged if you find yourself in that space where you're struggling with that. I think how you have that conversation with yourself and what you do afterwards is what matters, right? So it's a conversation that you have to have with yourself, that you will always have with yourself. It's one of those things that will always be part of your being, right? But over time, you can develop the awareness that it takes to be able to have that to recognize it when it's showing up, you know, work that out, and then be able to move forward in good faith. So it's not to say, oh, you shouldn't have, and you're a type of person. No, it's like, it'll come up. That's okay. How do you deal with that? And what are the choices that you make moving forward? So don't shut yourself off to that. Just embrace it. Embrace it.
Gotta sit on it.
Yeah, you have to give yourself some time. And like, especially like on a college campus, and this is for students, it's for faculty, it's for staff, because we all are doing so many things. Like, create some time for yourself, like to just think.
Yeah.
To think. Like, we never build that into our schedule. It's like, oh yeah, I could sit here and be by myself, or I could go to this BSA meeting, or I could go to this thing that's happening on campus. But it's just as important, if not more important, to have those times that you intentionally build into your schedule to be there for yourself and to see who you are and who you're turning into. Anyways, are there any questions?
Wait, I have one more question.
Yeah, I meant for us.
Oh, okay. I thought you were moving on to audience questions. I was like, wait. So where do you see yourselves, or like, what is a goal that you all have for your work? Like, let's say in like the next 5 to 10 years. Like, sorry, y'all. Like, I'm just like thinking like, if this was a perfect world, because we know it ain't. But if you could have like your dream come true in the next 5 to 10 years, what would that look like?
In a world you want to live in, like what would that world look like? Or that
Well, she took it there. I didn't mean
Or that
like.
community.
Yeah.
I got the answer swift.
Sorry, I went too deep.
No.
I'm just thinking, like, I just kind of want to get into your heads as far as like your work, and like where do you see yourselves like growing in your work to impact your communities, and maybe that's a certain project that you kind of want to accomplish, but you haven't, and not to like speak a project that maybe you're thinking about but haven't shared out loud, but where do you see that impact happening in like the next 5 to 10 years, and what is it that you want to grow to?
And have you had time to think?
Yeah. All
You've been thinking that far.
So one way I can try to describe it is to be able to leverage whatever privilege I have, whether that's privilege that comes from the degrees that I have, the work that I do, the connections that the sum total of my resources, privilege, right? Leverage that to create a space that maybe doesn't exist right now, so that people who otherwise would not be involved could come into that space, to bring themselves into that space and be themselves in that space, and then lend their collective voice and stories in a way that builds up some communal narrative that just changes communities for the better and the lives of the people that are in it. That's it.
That's a lot. You say that's it, like
Yeah.
it's nothing major.
I mean,
It's amazing.
I feel that because so one of my mentors, Jessica Ray, invited me out to the Lucas Center. She's like, "Oh, do you know some students?" And I could have went to like my fraternity brothers or anybody else, but I was like, you know what? There's a couple individuals, and I selected Priya as one of them. And as she's speaking, the whole audience is just like, "Where have you been?" And she's like, "I've been here this whole time. Nobody ever reached out to me." So it's like one of those things you mentioned, like using your leverage to help others, and so I definitely felt that.
Because I feel like we talk about, for the most part, we talk about privilege in negative ways, and I think that's definitely true, and we should speak to that. I think the point to which privilege becomes toxic is when it's self-serving, right? So I'm gonna get all this stuff, I'm gonna hold on to it, as opposed to I got this. How can everybody eat this, right? How do I turn this around, flip it around, so that everybody eats, or everybody has access to whatever it is going on, you know what I mean? So somebody comes to you and says, hey, and you're like, you know what? Let me bring Pri in here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's true of privilege in most cases. I mean, not saying any, just.
It's just a selfish world that we live in too. Like, you know what I mean? Like the privilege aspect of it, but it's like the greed and the want to just want it all versus let's share out. So one of the I just got back from a conference, so I'm like, everything is fresh in my mind. But one of the stories that they shared, there's a video on YouTube, and it's about, like, we're all at this table, and there's a bowl of soup, and we all have long spoons, and we're all trying to eat from the soup, but we can't get the spoons
So
to
you
our
feed
face.
somebody, yeah.
And then everyone's like frustrated and angry because they're trying to feed themselves, and they can't because the spoon is
long-ass
too long and
spoon,
they
yeah.
don't reach. And then one of them got the bright idea to turn the spoon around and feed the other person.
Mhm.
And so it's like,
Mm.
why are we so focused on like what we need when we can be sharing out what we have?
Mhm. And that's community,
Exactly.
right?
Like, we get so caught up in the mindset, like, there's not enough for all of us, when there is. So it's like, when you think there's not enough, obviously, as much as you can take, you're gonna wanna take it for yourself. Because it's like, if this is a limited resource, limited power, or positions as a woman, like, we don't get access to as many positions, if it's everything so limited, I just want all for me. When it's really not like that, there's enough for all of us. There's enough success for all of us to be successful. And I think that the sooner we get out of that mindset, it's like, let's share our wealth, and that we all can be wealthy. I think it'll push this little visual that Wendell has shared with us to get to a world or a community where all of our privilege is coming to the table and we're able to help each other out.
So what's your vision?
Oh.
Because we didn't forget.
I was like, I didn't forget, don't worry. I was like,
we can all do
I was like, I
this.
facilitate a lot, and I remember.
That one.
That was, we did, I'm just gonna
I
throw
like
it on that one.
I was like, I do a lot of facilitations. I remember who I called on and who's been talking, so don't worry. You have your space. Take your space now.
No, I think for me, over the next few years, focusing on imagination.
No, he's like, no, I'm switching mine to that one.
No, funny, I was at a conference and there was a panelist who said, there are communities, we talk about the future in practice and we have these like 50-year timelines, but the future for most people is tomorrow.
Right.
How are we radically like rethinking and living that 50-year vision tomorrow? And I want to do work that like encourages communities of color and really focus on young adults when it comes to like that civic muscle, to feel confident that they can have that sense of imagination, and also that it's necessary to have that sense of imagination,
Foundational, yeah.
because the way our world is shifting, it's going to take bold ideas,
Yes.
like very, very bold and imaginative ideas to like change the way we engage with our environment, with each other, with money, with the idea of wealth. So for me, like work that allows me to do that, and also helps people to go back and to look at these histories that are hidden, that have been valuable. Those neighborhood legends that talked about but aren't honored and memorialized in our built environment, through monuments, but in the way that we carry like our habits or values in the space. So any opportunity that allows me to do that, I'm for it.
I think, and I'm glad you spoke to that, because I think that's something else that I've also identified within the time that I've been working that, is not present in mainstream planning profession is the sense of urgency, right? So planning by, profession is like, you're always like thinking ahead. I mean, you're planning, right? But that usually takes the form of like 10, 20, 30 years. And me, I'm just like, I'm looking around these communities, I'm like,
We don't have that long.
Yeah, these folks are like, already, they got one foot out the
Like
door.
yesterday.
Yeah, and that sense of urgency is not part of planning practice. And so similar to what DJ mentioned, like I would want to be in a kind of a space where, and maybe that thing that I talked about hopefully is a place where that time horizon is shortened, right? Where you can start building that muscle from now, because we can't wait. I mean, as people come to this country, like,
So how do you create? So how do you create that for your I guess career field? How do you foresee that happening?
How do you impact
How do
your
you
career?
right? Like how do you create that certain sense of urgency and make that happen?
So I think I can't. So that's,
Why?
It's not mine to create. How do I create a sense of urgency? I can talk about it, I can maybe point something, make people aware of it,
Right.
right? But then the action that needs to happen in light of that awareness is not mine to take. Because again, like, it's the community has to make that kind of decision. So what you can do is to try to, again, leverage what you have to create a space where people can come together, build that muscle, create community, build community, all that kind of stuff, establish a set of values, and then it's like, oh, shoot, and then we all move forward in a particular direction. So it can't be one person's thing, right? A movement's not built off of one person.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? So that's why I say I cannot create it. All I can do is just say, oh, there's a need for this to happen. How can I leverage what I have to maybe create the space where this can happen? And you hope that that is the impact that creates, right? So, yeah,
Planting that seed.
Yeah.
right. It's just planting that
But I
seed.
think to add to that, like, there's room for self. I think the way we've been talking about it is like self is bad, community is
No,
good,
yeah.
right? And like you can go to places in Japan where like the individual voice is like muted for the sake of the community. So where's identity in that? Where like everything is for the alleged greater good, but
Yeah.
nobody has a voice,
Yeah.
right? So I think there's something to be said about like what I've decided to take on is embodied practice. When I show up, I'm a black man, who's cisgendered, who's from New Orleans, born in this time, like with these set of values. And that doesn't mean I'm limited
Correct.
in my view,
Correct.
but I am coming with a perspective and it's enriched by these experiences.
Mhm.
And if I don't say that,
Right.
and if I don't bring that, then it comes off like I'm an autonomous,
Right.
feeling
Right.
objective
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
that's a matter of self-awareness. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people don't even know what cisgender means. A lot of people don't know what their identity means
Mhm.
in those spaces, and having that privilege of knowledge
Mhm.
Yeah.
to be able to sit in that space in your identities and allow that to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, I even think about like when we talk about like community, right, and leveraging. We don't have to go far. We can look at musicians, right? We can look at how many people in like in hip hop, like they're an individual rapper or hip hop artist, and then like, oh, I'm creating a label so I can put other people on. They have to focus on their talent and the way they show up in the world and honor that instead of just saying, I want to create a record label.
Right.
Because if they don't,
Right.
who they are and like work on that part,
Mhm.
then other people won't gravitate towards it.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's spot on. Yeah, I mean, it's.
So we need you too.
Right, no, but no, and I do agree because I mean, that's the value that you bring into that. That's why I say it's not enough to just bring yourself,
Right.
but be yourself into that space, right? Because that itself is a way of leveraging whatever towards that goal. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's a reason. So it could be that because of who you are, because of what you bring to the table, you're able to have access to a lot more different resources, a lot more different, you know, et cetera, that you can then leverage to bring to that on behalf of
Yeah.
everybody else, right? But again, if you don't focus on your talent and trying to refine your craft and be the best that you can
Yeah.
be, then your impact can only go so far, your reach can only go so far, right? But as you are working on behalf of the community, you also got to be focusing on yourself, which is why self-care is so important.
Yeah.
Because if you don't take the time to recharge, reset, all that kind of stuff, then you yourself don't progress. And so you're always operating in like half.
And I think self-exploration in that self-care is important. So understanding your identities, understanding who you are and how you want to present yourself is so important. I think in that entire process, like if you don't explore who you are, your styles, the things that you like, the things that really get you excited to be in spaces, to create and all of that, if you don't have that piece along with the self-care and that self-exploration, I think it's disjointed.
This is such a great conversation, but yeah, every great thing comes to an end at one point. You know what I'm
Got
saying?
questions?
Not now. We're
Well-
just gonna have to have y'all come back. How about that? Really
No audience
soon?
questions.
Do we,
For
audience
sure.
questions? We could like shut it off, repeat?
Like 2?
Audience questions. Okay, we're gonna take like 2 audience questions.
Okay. So earlier we were talking about organizing and of the collective. So within the collective, how do you build trust and how do you create the spaces where you have action and reflection at the same time? So that you have take time to debrief as a collective.
One, listen. I mean, it's funny. Like I think about just the organizing work I was able to do in a short amount of time. I just like sat in the room and I just listened.
For like 6 hours.
I mean, even in some of those spaces, and people most of the time were saying the exact same thing.
Wow.
But because either they were on the defense or felt like their voice wasn't going to get heard, or people didn't talk, so their values were never expressed, like nobody held space long enough to say, oh, you guys are actually saying the same thing, but also I'm going to allow you to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
Because hearing your voice matters, and we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity
That's
to
how it
do
feels
that.
like collective.
Yeah.
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 So I mean, I talked about in my podcast episode. I talked about it ended up being called a town hall event. That wasn't my thing. Like I didn't call it a town hall eventing. I think Caesar and his genius ended up calling it that. But it's the notion that you have a space where that kind of reflection can take place in whatever form it needs to happen. Whether it's something that's a little bit more diplomatic or whether it's like very emotionally charged, where it's like however it needs to be delivered, it gets because it's cathartic, right? So I think those spaces are important, and so creating those spaces where that kind of dialogue can happen, where you can hold space for however long it needs to over however period of time, because it's nonstop. I think it's super important to be able to like have that reflection, have that debrief in whatever way is necessary, and then just kind of like keep going from there. Because I mean that doesn't take place actually in planning, right? I mean in planning there's this whole public engagement process where city staff or consultants will have these public meetings to talk about this plan and that plan and X, Y, and Z, and then that's supposed to like inform the plan and what happens, but then there's never like a debrief session afterwards, right? So where it's like, hey, so this process is done or we're currently in implementation, let's talk about what happened over I don't even think we do this internally for the most part. You see what I'm saying? So it's a problem. I think having that kind of space where you can sit down and like really think about what just happened and how can it be better is super, super important.
Another question?
I have a quick question, or just sort of a comment, because we met you all on the podcast series right before you met us, and then we had set up a meeting with Wendell up there. You saw this group when we were about 6 weeks together for this pilot, right? And we delivered a workshop at MIT. And then y'all came down and you just spent 5 days with this cohort that we have, right? So I wanted to hear sort of your thoughts on sort of this group, maybe how it's evolved, or your experience, and why'd y'all come down? Was there something specifically? Specifically talking about the group, the collective. What was some of your thoughts on that?
No, I think having the group up at MIT during that time was like, just so impactful. The energy you guys brought was like an energy I have hardly felt in that area. Well, in Cambridge or in the greater Boston area, and can only be rivaled with like actually meeting like neighborhood legends who've been doing the work for like who are in their 90s and have been doing the work since teenage years. So but to feel that energy and that conviction, and that everybody had their own part to play.
Right.
It wasn't a competition. It wasn't, hey, who can be the best performer, who can be the best artist, who can be the best speaker. It was, I have this talent. I will use this talent to the best of my ability to convey what I need to convey. And I think that, the bond that you guys shared just left such an impression that I said, what is in the water down here?
I'm having FOMO. Like, I
was like, what is the,
so nice.
Yeah, it's like, what is the landscape that you guys are in, and like, how's home turf?
Right.
How's it feel being on the home turf that they came from? Like, on their home turf? Like, you're here now, so what is that? Like, that comment right now is like...
Yeah, I think you guys are strong. Like, the landscape here is just like, it's wide.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine how tough it is to organize folks consistently and keep your own head on your shoulders and you know, and make time for living in general. And so the fact that you're able to do that and to do it consistently and to do it with passion. Like there are people doing community work who don't have the passion for community and haven't. And like the fact that you guys bring that across this landscape.
It's, you know, for me, it was just proof of what's possible. You know what I mean? It's proof of what's possible in the sense of people who are interdependent, who are individuals, come together around a certain goal or vision, and there's space within that core for everybody to be themselves and contribute in their own kind of way. And when you have that many different people, each lending their own talent and their own voice in service of that particular goal or vision or outcome, that's when like magic happens, you know what I mean? And I think it was like, that's kind of like what I witnessed is like, this is just magical, because it's like this, everything that society tells us that this should not exist. And here it is. And it came together in like 6 weeks. Nah, it's not supposed to be possible, but you always hope that it is. And that's what makes it so magical. And it's like, all right, I gotta, you know, I gotta see it. Show me again, right? Show me again. You know what I mean? Like, you know, how'd you do that? And sure enough, it's like, you know, similar thing. I mean, we bounced around like 4 or 5 different houses in 4 or 5 different days, and it's like constant. You know what I mean? And each house has its own different vibe. Each house has its own different like feel to it. But then that magic is like still there. And it's like, oh, okay, this is for real. Like this is real. That's powerful right there.
We're not gonna linger because I
No.
might cry. Is there another question?
I thought
No?
you didn't.
Oh, not as late, it's okay.
All right, so I think it's the moment we've all been waiting for. We have all been waiting for this moment. We just want to thank everyone, especially our 2 lovely guests, for being with us
Thank
here.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it was just a pleasure to have you here at the table.
That was not
All right, okay, thank you all for being here at the table.
Oh man.
I literally make eye contact with all of y'all.